Hello and welcome back to My Mom's Basement, ladies and gentlemen. We are on location. We are down in Jacksonville, and I'm here with Excalibur, one of my favorite commentators in the wrestling business, going back a long time now, going back since I got into PWG, 2011 I think I got into it. So this is a long time coming. I'm glad that you showed up in an Oasis shirt because, oh my God, I'm such an Oasis fan. Let me ask you right away, are you definitely maybe over What's the Story guy?
I didn't expect this interview to get off to like such a tough start. I think actually, What's the Story? I think
it's tough.
Yeah, it's like
Slide Away on Definitely Maybe, and Rock and Roll Star and Columbia, and
it's a Sophie's choice.
It is, yeah.
You could say a Nolan Liam's choice.
Yeah. So. You looking forward to Revolution? I mean, this is airing after the pay-per-view, but we are taping it before, so.
What a great event it was. I hope everybody orders the replay, available on pay-per-view and Fight TV. Yes, totally looking forward to it. I think every time AEW's had a pay-per-view, we over-deliver.
Yeah.
And so I expect Revolution to be nothing short of that. And I mean, it's just like the incredible amount of talent that we've accumulated in. It's almost impossible. I mean, you could pick any two people at random and pit them against each other, and
yeah.
You have a great matchup. So yeah, I think now with the Revolution being the culmination of so many so many different arcs, I think it's going to be awesome, and I'm personally looking forward to I think every single match on the card for different reasons.
Now that you're doing live TV on a weekly basis and you've got the pay-per-views a couple times a year, what is the biggest difference as a commentator in calling each? Do you do a lot more prep for pay-per-views? Is it more prep for TV? What are the differences?
I try to do the same amount of prep. I try to treat them with equal importance. I think the toughest thing for me is calling dark, actually, because a lot of times the matches for dark, we don't know that until the afternoon of the show. Whereas, for Dynamite, typically we'll know things a week in advance, maybe a couple weeks in advance. And so I can start, jotting down notes, pulling things together. Whereas, dark, sometimes it'll be, a local talent or an indie talent that I'm not that familiar with times, 15 matches. And so that's, prepping for that on a show day is tough, and so I try to cram in as much as I possibly can, but it's tough to give the same level of attention to that as it is to Dynamite or pay-per-views. Pay-per-views, we've known what the matches are for a month. I've been working off and on my notes and stuff like that for a while, but yeah. So I mean, it's tough, but I think the good thing is with Elevation coming up, then the load will kind of get split in half, and I'll be able to prep a little more how I like to. Yeah.
Totally. And you just mentioned on AEW Dark, you're bringing in indie talent all the time. AEW is, not you personally, I guess.
Yeah.
But I would love to take it back to the start with PWG, because I'm such a PWG fan, and it's a company that you were one of the founders of. Did you meet Super Dragon on a wrestling video game forum? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Super Dragon and I actually co-ran a wrestling video game site in 1996. The very early days of the internet, and Super Dragon would, at the time, he emailed us asking a question, and it was like, hey, I'm a wrestler in California. And then we just started talking over email, and became friends through that. Yeah.
At that point, when you're starting to talk to him, starting to become friends, do you want to be a wrestler? Is that your dream?
I had done backyard stuff, but I never thought it was a viable profession, and so it was something that I wanted to try, but not something that I ever. Because I'm not the most athletic guy in the world, so I didn't think that it was necessarily I was going to be main eventing one day, but I definitely wanted to try it, and so that's how I ended up moving to California to try to pursue that.
So you moved to California. I move in with Super Dragon, right, for a little bit. You train. Do you train under him? Does he teach you how to wrestle, or no?
Well, so there was a couple guys. It was It was Revolution Pro was the school in California, the original Revolution Pro, not the UK one.
Yeah.
And American Wild Child, this guy Ron Rivera, he ran it. He was friends with Conan, and so we had we had access to a lot of the luchadors that would if they had a show in Tijuana, maybe they would come up to Anaheim, like Juventud would come up, and so. But I mean, I primarily worked with Super Dragon, but there was a few other guys that were really influential and more experienced guys. But looking back on it now, they were more experienced because they had been wrestling for 2 years and I had been wrestling for 0 years.
Yeah.
Whereas now I've been around the business for 20 plus, and so it seems so funny to say that.
What was the inspiration behind starting PWG?
We had some bad experiences on the indies with promoters just taking advantage of people. There was one show where it was a 9/11 benefit show, and the promoter left at intermission with the entire gate, the charitable donation, and so everybody was working the show for free. The fans had already paid for it, and so when we realized that he was gone, we just all agreed to go out and do the second half of the show because the fans had already paid. Yeah. We had already agreed to work for free, and so. But it was experiences like that where we were just like, well, why break our backs for somebody else when we can do something our way and kind of put on shows in a way that we would like to see. And so that was kind of the impetus for PWG. I founded it or co-founded it with 5 other guys. Yep. And so each person had a different vision of what pro wrestling could and should be. And so it was interesting, and over time the number narrowed down to just kind of Dragon and myself, with Dragon just kind of being in charge of most everything and me just kind of clinging on for the ride.
And when you're looking at all that, the whole PWG journey in hindsight, was there a moment or a match where you look at and you said, man, that took us to the next level? Or was it kind of from the start things all clicked with the company? Because we look at it now, obviously it's like the premier super indie where everyone knows you're buying a PWG DVD, you're definitely going to get some amazing match of the year quality matches on it. Was it like that from the start?
Not from the start. I think in the early years we were just kind of finding our way and deciding what the shows would look like. But I think it was Battle of Los Angeles in 2006. Which had that was the first show that the Dragon Gate guys came over from Japan, and we kind of looked around at, it was like a who's who of the American indies. These Dragon Gate guys there, and I think we just kind of were like, oh wow, we've got something here. And then from there on, I think there was a steady upward progression, and right around the time that you became a fan in 2011. That was really like the heyday for Steen and Generico and those guys. And those were, really, really pivotal matches for us that then would set the stage for the next generation of guys that would come in around like 2014, 2015. And then those guys would set the stage for the guys that came around in like 2018, 2019. And so, it was interesting how there's all these different eras, and none of it was intentional, but it just, that things happened. Guys would get signed, guys would become unavailable, and so we'd have to go in a different direction, bring in more guys. Yeah,
that's so cool for me to hear. As just such a big fan of the company, like the beginning days to where it got to where it is now. Do you recall? I mean, there's the famous Bryan Danielson versus Claudio match, where the headlock match. They famously both told the story that Super Dragon was apparently livid with them after this match. Do you recall that?
So. I don't actually know if I was in the building for that one. I think I might have called that one in post. The match that...
I love the match. If people haven't seen it, it's literally,
they hold a headlock for 10 minutes.
10 minutes, just a headlock. And by the time that they get out of it, the crowd, the pop of, it's just like, it's such a weird, unique match. It feels like if you're watching like movies and you watch a weird art movie, but you're like, they kind of nailed what they were going for,
Well, so the one I do remember being there for was the Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega match, where everybody, I think, was expecting, this just hard-hitting, fast-paced match of the year, like, something like, literally two of the top wrestlers in the entire world. Almost in any era of their careers.
Yeah.
And about 6 minutes in, Kenny Omega says, "Stop, what's your name?" And they do this whole John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt routine, and they start dancing and do-si-doing around the ring. And I'm on commentary for this, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on? And the crowd enjoyed it, and the crowd was very happy, but it wasn't the match that I think anybody was expecting. And so there was a lot of conversations around that. But
we're trying to hold back your confusion on commentary.
Yes, every reaction of mine was completely legitimate in that. And so, but that's the great thing about pro wrestling and Pro Wrestling Guerrilla in general, is that it was a place for guys to experiment, and it was a place for guys to kind of get these do these more, like you said, art movie or concept style matches out of their system. And so it was a great a great breeding ground for talent. You have some of the best wrestling minds in the business all fighting to get their viewpoint and their perspective on wrestling across in front of one of the hottest crowds anywhere in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So you won, what was it, Television Announcer of the Year this year in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
I want to ask you, when you started doing commentary, was it just as, hey, we need someone to do commentary so I could step up and do it? Or when did you start looking at that as like a passion or something that, hey, this is going to define like a lot of my career going forward?
It was by necessity at first.
Yeah.
It was that we needed to put out DVDs, or I think our first show actually came out on VHS as well.
Get out of here.
And so
that what a collector's item that would be. The first PWG show on VHS. I want that now in my collection.
Out there somewhere.
I need that. If you have it, I'll buy it off you.
And so yeah, it was just by necessity, and it was a lot of us just joking around, and
yeah, like the commentary style is, obviously so laid back. You're cursing on commentary. You got wrestlers stepping up to the booth with you. There's so many moments. I look back at some of my favorite moments in the company's history are just the moments where you and Kevin Steen were laughing so hard you were crying because he was doing, a Sami Zayn impression or something like that.
And it's, that's reminiscent of, or, I guess AEW Dark is a little reminiscent of that, because Taz and I have, such a casual rapport. But yeah, I think it was Danielson's last match in PWG when he got released from WWE, did an indie tour.
He came back,
won the PWG championship, and then beat Hero for the championship in his last match. And just that night, knowing that then we had Battle of Los Angeles coming up the next show, it was really like wow, these guys are performing on such an amazing level that if I'm not taking this as seriously, then I'm doing the product in the ring a disservice. And so it was around that time that I really started to, I think, transition. I still like to have fun on commentary.
Yeah.
Do like my little inside references for people that have been watching for years. But I like to try to make it accessible to newcomers, and really to kind of call the action in it with a sports type feel, or mainstream sports type feel, rather than a pro wrestling type feel, if that makes sense.
Do you take inspiration from like sports commentators in that case then? Do you look at maybe a wrestling commentator would say Jim Ross is my idol, or Gorilla Monsoon is my idol. Do you look at someone that called hockey and you say that was...
Well, yeah, I grew up in Detroit right around the time that the Red Wings were, multiple time Stanley Cup champions, and so just that is always in the back of my head. And then modern day, I think Mike Breen, who's the NBA announcer for ABC, he's the passion and excitement that he brings to basketball, along with weaving the stories through the play-by-play and things like that. That was really inspirational to me. And so I've been a lifelong wrestling fan, so working with JR and Tony,
I can't imagine what that's like for you.
It's a dream come true. But I wouldn't be true to myself if I was trying to do a JR or Tony impression.
Of course, I
want to kind of stay authentic to my voice and my perspective on pro wrestling. And I think we make it work. And I was winning the Observer Award was a shock, and it was a very pleasant surprise. But there's no way I could have even been in the position to win it without JR, Tony, and Taz, because I learned so much from them every single show. They're they've been calling pro wrestling for a collective 60 plus years, if you think about it that way. And they've seen just about everything you can. They've called every type of match. They've pitched every type of promo, or things like that. And so just being able to learn from them week after week has been an amazing experience.
Do you have any particular lessons or stuff that you learned from either Tony or JR or Taz, where you look at and you say that was like such an important thing for me to learn that I didn't know before?
JR, one of the first shows, I think it was either Fighter Fest or Fight for the Fallen in 2019. JR said to me, he's like, "You got good points, but we don't get paid by the word." And so, I realized, like when it's a PWG show and I'm calling it by myself, I can ramble on for as long as I need to make a point. But when I have to pass the ball between two other guys, being concise and really making a point with an economy of words was that's something that for live television, I hadn't done a lot of up until that point, and that's a lesson that really kind of stuck with me.
And what has it been like for you calling Dynamite each and every week? Like, you went from calling a PWG show a month to now being one of the faces of AEW in terms of we tune in, we see the three of you at the commentary desk every day. Has the last few years of your life just been completely different, completely changed?
Yeah, just on a purely practical level, before this I had a day job that I'd go to Monday through Friday, and
wow.
AEW has allowed me the chance to have a career in pro wrestling. And so, rather than going to an office, 5 days a week, I'm on the road.
With people that you kind of came up with, right? Like the Backstage locker room, there's a lot of guys that come from that indie scene that you came up with, the PWG scene. It's
been said multiple times by multiple people, like after we have like a really red hot, like action paced match, and be like, wow, this is like a PWG show with a budget.
Yeah.
And so it is cool to see that, and it's cool to walk into the building and see so many of my my colleagues from years ago, and especially because guys' careers take them obviously very different directions, and so there's people that you get close with, and then maybe they would get signed, or they would go to Japan or something, and then you don't see them for a while. And now here, like Bryce Remsburg is a perfect example. He was a guy that I met early on in our both of our careers, but because he was on the Northeast, and he was having a family and doing all that, and I was based on the West Coast. We didn't really see each other. We stay in touch a little bit here and there, but since AEW started, we've just it's just kind of picked up right where we left off, in terms of our friendship and our camaraderie, and I think the entire locker room is a lot like that.
That's, you kind of get a sense of it. It's awesome, and all the backstage stuff, the behind the being the elite stuff, like you get a sense that everyone's having a fun time. Everyone's having a blast backstage. I just had Jerry Lynn in here, and he was saying, I've never had a more fun job in my life. He said, I hope AEW stays around for 40 years so I can have a job for 40 more years. He loves it so much.
Yeah, I concur completely. That's it's unlike just about any locker room in wrestling, because PWG, part of the mindset was that we want guys that want to be here. We want guys that care about pro wrestling, that aren't just looking for a payday, or guys that have bad attitudes and things like that. And I think that's very, very similar to the AEW locker room, where of course there's interpersonal squabbles here.
Name
and there.
names. No, I'm kidding.
But no, it's I think for the most part, everybody's able to, if there is something that happens, they're able to hash it out, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be here. Everybody realizes that you're more or less in on the ground floor of something that is you know, has the potential to live on for 40 plus years.
Totally.
And,
People still feel like, it doesn't have the budget of an upstart company,
Mhm.
but it has the feel of it, in that, like, it still feels almost like an underground thing, even to the fans. Like, this is our thing. We're getting behind this, and we're going to make it something that, like you said, lasts for generations to come,
well,
hopefully.
I mean, I think it is a startup in that regard, because everybody within the company wears multiple hats.
Yeah.
Like Kenny Omega, as well as being our world champion, is he's an executive producer for AEW games, and so he's working on that stuff where, and that might be something where, in a different company, he could have like a consulting role, but he wouldn't be hands-on, emailing the developers asking about this, looking for status updates and things like that. And
even Tony, right? Between running the Jaguars, between running Fulham and AEW, I don't know how that guy finds the time in the day.
It's crazy, and and so that there really is that startup mindset here, where everybody knows that you've got to, just because your job title is this, there's so many other things that need to get done. And like somebody said, like if the ring crew didn't show up one day, if they got stuck in travel or something like that, that nobody in the locker room would even think twice about going out there and setting up the ring. And that's I think that's really different from from a lot of places, and even indie places. Where,
in like a small way, you could kind of see it towards in the front of the pandemic, like in the beginning of the pandemic. You guys sent the roster out there to be the fans right away, and it was like, hey, react like your fans, go crazy. Like, some wrestlers might be too cool for that, but nobody in AEW was. Everyone said, we want to make this show as great as we can. We want to make as much noise as we can. So there's the small ways where we could kind of even get glimpses into that.
Yeah, and I think that that also speaks to the heart of the matter, that everybody in AEW is a fan of pro wrestling. I mean, there's some people that pro wrestling is my job, but I don't really watch it anymore. Yeah, a little bit jaded, but I think if there was somebody that came into AEW like that, it's definitely rekindled it. I mean, like Tony Schiavone, for example, he's somebody that didn't watch wrestling for 20 years after he left WCW.
Yeah.
And now that he's around our locker room and he gets to see the product week after week, it's rekindled his excitement for it. He'll go back and Jerry Lynn, for example, he was talking to Jerry, and Jerry was talking about this match he had, and Tony's like, oh, I've never seen that. And he jotted down a note in his phone. He's like, when I get home, I'm going to watch this. And so that's the kind of passion and excitement that's shared through the locker room.
Do you have a favorite moment thus far in AEW? Do you have one that sticks out as like, man, that was awesome?
There's a lot. Seeing Revolution last year with the Bucks versus Kenny and Hangman. I mean, that was kind of a PWG match on a very grand stage.
It really was.
But seeing matches like when Scorpio Sky wrestled Chris Jericho, that was, prior to AEW, it was a match that I don't think anybody thought could ever happen.
No, I mean, Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho, that's a perfect example right there.
But for me personally, though, Sky is a guy that I've known since he began training back at Revolution Pro in Anaheim, and so to see his progression from this kid to now this guy that is standing toe to toe with one of the all-time greats of pro wrestling, that is, I mean, for me personally, that was really, really cool and really rewarding, and reminded me of the fact of how lucky we are to have AEW for moments like that.
Yeah. All right, final question. I begun the interview with an Oasis question. I'm going to close it with an Oasis question. Liam or Noel, which team do you choose?
I mean, I think you got to go Liam, just because I'm
a Liam guy. I mean, he's the cooler one.
Yeah.
I get that Noel wrote the songs. I get that Liam might have been the reason why the band broke up in the end, but I mean, come on, with the parkas, with the lean, with the hands behind the back.
Yeah, I mean, yes, Noel was like the, he was like the adult in the room.
Yeah.
And Liam, I guess the adult me is Team Noel, but like young me is Team Liam.
Liam's the one that you want to be when you grow up, or it's the one you want to be when you grow up, and then when you grow up, you're like, maybe not.
Oh, yeah, actually, yeah. You can't stay out and party all the time. Somebody's got to keep the lights on around
it's
here.
no good, yeah. All right, thank you, Excalibur. This has been awesome. It's been a long time coming for me. It was cool getting to talk to you about PWG, AEW, all that stuff. I'm excited for Revolution coming up this weekend.
Yeah, thank you, Robbie. It's my pleasure.